Welcome into 2-for-1 Drafts. I'm Austin Gayle here with Mike Renner, ready to talk all the things draft. And I want to we're going to talk at the beginning of the podcast, bring up positional value and how you really want to factor it in to player evaluation, building your draft board. We had an opportunity to talk with Scott Pioli, the former Kansas City Chiefs GM, and I think he gave a lot of good insight, one, on the coronavirus outbreak and how that's affecting, or I guess not affecting, NFL teams and how we're approaching this draft, and also his take on positional value and how teams currently are addressing it and how he addressed it when he was GM. We're also going to give out some player comparisons. We got a couple good segments on the back end, and in between it all, I interviewed Jaylon Johnson, the former Utah cornerback, and I also interviewed former Cal safety Ashtyn Davis. Before we dive into the show, we have to bring up the email in the reviews, the podcast reviews. So we've been telling you we're going to give a draft guide, a free draft guide to 5 reviewers who leave their email in a review of the podcast on iTunes. But iTunes removes your email if you put it in the review. So we're dumb, we're morons, we've kind of screwed you guys. But if you do redo it and do the first part of your email, spaces between the @ symbol, and then whatever email you have, Yahoo, Gmail, whatever it is, it will show up, and we're going to give you a draft guide no matter what. If you do that, we're going to give you a draft guide. Not just 5 people, however many reviews that have that structure of their email in the review, we're going to give a draft guide. Mike, can you apologize to the people with me? I feel bad.
I was like looking, I'm like, why? Like, we're getting, our reviews were going up, but we weren't getting people putting their email. I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. And then so I went and like just left a review on a random podcast with my email, and it just didn't show up. And I'm like, oh.
Was it a good review?
It was. I gave a 5-star review. I'm a nice guy. But
nice.
It was the Jeselnik and Rosenthal Vandy Project, which is a great podcast, by the way. Mm-hmm. But yes, we'll give anyone, if you leave it before Monday's show, we will give you a draft guide. We will email you that draft guide. You're going to want this. So go ahead, leave that review, and we'll get you a draft guide. It doesn't even have to be a 5-star review, but I'd probably say a 5-star would be nice.
Yeah. Well, the draft guide is over 1,100 pages now. It's available to all existing Edge and Elite subscribers. But if you don't want to subscribe, you don't want to grab a subscription from PFF, just leave a review with your email spaced out by @ symbols or whatever you got to do to get it to show up, and we'll make sure to send you a draft guide. Back to the show here. We're going to talk. Let's first talk about this position value argument. You recently tweeted out a list of the top 10 on average per year paid to the top 10 players at each position in a tweet. I worded that terribly.
I would say you want to try
Can
it
you
again?
just take the reins? Can you
I'll
just take
try.
the reins?
Okay, I'll
just
try.
Take the reins.
So it's the per year average of the contract for the top 10 at each position. So quarterback is $32 million. Running back is $9.2 million. Wide receiver, $18 million. Tight end, $8.6 million. Offensive tackle, $15.4 million. Interior offensive line, $12.8 million. Go to the defensive side of the ball. We have defensive tackle at $17.4 million. Edge at $18.9 million, linebacker $13.9 million, cornerback $14.5 million, and safety $12.6 million. If you don't want to just have me read that off to you, you can just go and check the tweet. I tweeted out on Wednesday, I want to say. But the gist of it is quarterback, wide receiver, offensive tackle, defensive tackle, edge, and I'd throw in cornerback as well. The price for those positions is far more for the top end than running back, tight end, linebacker, safety. And the gist of that is you are saving yourself cap space by drafting those positions early because they're cost controlled. If you get a good player at that position, it saves you from having to pay a quarterback $32 million, at offensive tackle $15 million. Like, it's saving you far more than the other positions, like a center, like a linebacker, tight end and running back are the biggest, or the 2 lowest by far. Do not draft those early because you're not, like, you can go out and find one in free agency and have a more sure thing to hit the NFL and pay not a lot for it.
And that doesn't even get into the, that obviously speaks to how much money you're saving by drafting like quarterbacks and offensive tackles high, but that doesn't even also get into the fact that those positions that are paid more on average also help you win football games more. They offer more value on the football field, like quarterback, offensive tackle, and wide receiver. It's one of multiple reasons why you avoid drafting running backs, tight ends, and other positions early in the draft. I think it's good insight there, but it only touches on half the story, because the reason these guys are paid more is because they matter more in football games. That's why it's better to address wide receiver, cornerback, and those things over, some of these other positions like linebacker, running back, tight end early in the draft. It's better to spend significant resource at more valuable positions, in addition to because you save money, but also because that helps your football team more.
And I think there's this sort of like vested interest for GMs to just get a guy who they can say is a good player. Like the guy to go that best player available in this sort of vacuum of a draft board that doesn't take any positional value into account, to draft your Saquon Barkley at number 2, to draft a Marcel Darius, in the top 5 of a draft, to draft this defensive tackle who's so physically. Derek Brown in this year's draft is a very good sort of is a guy who's probably the most indicative of that train of thought, to where he's going to be a hit. Like, he's going to be a sure thing in run defense. Boom, you got yourself a good football player. Congratulations. You drafted him 10th overall. You passed on a lot of guys who could actually have helped you win more football games, though, is the biggest thing. But GMs, when they go back and look at their track record, that's going to be chalked up as a W for them, even though they may have very well passed on a lot of players that could have impacted the football team a lot more.
Something that doesn't get discussed enough, and I think this is a good transition to bring up, the insight that Scott Pioli provided, is that a lot of the decisions made on draft day are to keep your job, are to keep your job and put something on the board that helps you the longevity of your career in the NFL. Maybe not so much when football games. And like you said, it's like, hey, if I draft Derek Brown, I know he's going to be very good against the run and a very good football player for my team. It's a safer pick. It keeps me in this business longer. Those things, I think it makes sense. But taking a risk on a receiver that could be one of the best in football, maybe the better pick there otherwise. But what Scott Pioli brought up, and I want to first start with this, is we talk a lot about the coronavirus and how it's affecting the pre-draft process. Teams aren't getting medical checks. Teams aren't able to meet these these players in person. The draft room's going to only be a select amount of people. They're going to have to lean on teleconferencing. We talked to Scott, and he's like, yeah, it's not going to really be a big deal. Like, they're going to be able to figure it out. Like, the rooms are already tight as it is. He was saying 95% of the draft day process will remain relatively unaffected, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, and the point that he brought up, which goes back to the GMs keeping their job sort of thing, is a lot of the people sort of making a stink about this and having their quotes out in the media saying that they can't believe that the NFL is going through with this, with all the pressure it puts on NFL teams, are the people who want that built-in excuse to where, hey, if they miss on these draft picks, if this draft doesn't go well, it was coronavirus. It was the fact that we couldn't vet these guys out. It was the fact that we couldn't get pre-draft visits and these injuries couldn't be vetted by our doctors. All of a sudden we are, gives you this excuse to where if you're a GM on the fringe of maybe getting fired, you can go to your owner and say, hey, we didn't have, look at everyone was behind the 8 ball on this and they didn't work out because, well, we didn't vet them for X and X reason. And that's something that us as outsiders, we really can't fill those shoes and actually feel that position they're in. Like it has to be something to that. You can't always just do what's in the best interest. Because sometimes that will cost you your job quicker than with maybe not doing in the best interest of your team, like mortgaging future first-round picks to make this year's team better isn't often in the long-term interest, but it might keep your job another year, if you do that and your team all of a sudden has this surge this next season. So it's something we can't understand as outsiders, but it definitely happens to NFL talent evaluators and NFL decision makers.
And with that being said, maybe there is this draft, you'll start to see GMs take more risks because you do have that mulligan, baked into this conversation with the draft because coronavirus. You take a risk on a guy with injury history. You take a risk on a guy with off-field concerns because you can lean on that excuse that you didn't have opportunities to vet him in those things. But if he pans out, it turns out to be a slam dunk. Maybe it leads GMs to being less safe in this upcoming draft, which I find interesting because we talk a lot about guys that maybe are affected by this that do have significant injury history. Tua Tagovailoa, Bryce Hall, Laviska Shenault, Netani Muti. Maybe it gives those guys an opportunity because GMs are less concerned because they do have that that excuse to lean on. I'm not sure. Is that the right way to interpret it? I don't know.
Also, though, what he did say that was really interesting that I didn't necessarily think of or hadn't realized, and actually Jim Nagy even touched on this when we talked to him, is that teams share the medical information gets disseminated to all 32 teams once you get some medical information. And like a guy goes to a doctor, that doctor takes the MRI, takes the x-rays, those x-rays go out to every single NFL team. A lot of NFL teams don't have the feasibility to go and visit with every single guy who has a medical sort of issue heading into the draft, pre-draft. So they rely on information sharing at the end of the day for a vast majority of guys. So I don't think that's going to be that much different this year than it has been in years past. People can still go to doctors. Like, you can still get medical care. That's still a thing that exists here.
Let's go back to the positional value discussion, talking about factoring it into your draft board, because we asked Scott about, that as well. And he brought up the fact that, when he was still, at working as a GM, they had 2 draft boards, one of which that reflected need and positional value, that kind of knew those 2 things and kind of factored them in at least somewhat, probably not to the degree the analytics mock draft was, not the analytics mock factors in positional value. But then there was another board. I think he said secret board on the interview. He did say there's a secret board or behind the scenes board that is purely how you grade the player regardless of position. And my thought process was, why in the world would you ever have a board that I just doesn't necessarily exist? Like that situation where there's regardless of position football just doesn't exist. And we talked to George Chahuri about it as well, the director of analytics at PFF, and he had a similar opinion in that if you have 2 boards, you don't even have one. You need to lean on one that factors in positional value with how football is actually being played.
See, I have a different opinion on that. And I think 2 boards can be a valuable thing in that it's almost like a thought exercise of, here's where I'd stack this running back in terms of NFL hierarchy. And here's where I'd stack this cornerback in terms of the NFL hierarchy. Like, I see this cornerback being an average cornerback at the next level. I see this quarterback being an average quarterback, but this running back or this tight end being elite. And yes, maybe wins above replacement, our WAR metric here at PFF, will tell you that average quarterback is far more valuable than that elite running back. That average cornerback is far more valuable than that quality tight end. But I think there's something to be said for, you don't want to be average at those valuable positions. Like, you want better than average. You want high quality play at those positions. And so at the end of the day, if the guy's ceiling, or if the guy's going to end up just being an average cornerback, and that's what you see him as, and if you're taking value into account, yes, it's going to say it's more valuable, but I think you need to set your sights. I keep saying set your sights higher than average at those valuable positions. So if it's the 2nd round and you see, and all the cornerbacks left are just like these guys you see as average, maybe on that value board they'll be higher, and the analytics guys will say that guy's more valuable, add him to the mix. But it's still not you should still set your sights a little higher than that position, than that player. And you can get yourself quality tight end. Roster composition, there's still something to be said for, getting good players and just having no weaknesses, that sort of thing.
And I can get on board with that argument somewhat. I think the one board that you do use that heavily factors in positional value also has to factor scheme fit and somewhat need in terms of, if we draft this player highly, will he have an opportunity to see the football field? Because that is where you put your, because you can only earn WAR, you can only earn wins above replacement if you're playing.
If you're on the field.
Yeah, exactly. So, and playing a high number of snaps heavily impacts how much value you bring to a football team. So if you are drafting a player, for example, the argument I bring up is that all of the quarterbacks in this upcoming class are going to have significant value because they play the position of the most value. So if on a purely driven position of value board, you have all these quarterbacks high in your thing, you're not going to draft 8 consecutive quarterbacks because they're not going to have an opportunity to see the football field. They're not going to have the opportunity to earn value, earn those wins above replacement. I think with that being said, factoring in, it's okay, we could take this average cornerback here in the 3rd round. He will play behind Darius Slay, another veteran corner, and the cornerback we drafted in the 1st round. He will not see the field, barring injury, all those things, this upcoming season. Maybe it makes more sense to go down a little bit on our board and bring a guy that will start next year, at the tight end position or running back position. I can get on board with that. The 2 boards, though, I'm not getting on board with the 2 boards. Just factor that all into one board. You don't need to do it. Interesting stuff from Scott Pioli. Interesting stuff, discussing position value, draft theory, and those things. To break between our top shelf or well segment, and Riggins is also breaking us up. Breaking up as well, but to break up the top shelf or well segment where we talk about first and linebackers, round 1 types versus day 2, day 3 types, and our perfect pairing segment of NFL comparisons, let's kick to the interviews with Jaylon Johnson and Ashtyn Davis. Joining the 2-for-1 Draft podcast, I have Utah cornerback Jaylon Johnson. Just got done watching through some of your favorite plays. Jaylon, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
Doing great, man. How's everything going with the pandemic right now, the crisis? I hope you and your family are doing okay.
Right. No, everything's all good. I mean, just staying inside, doing my rehab as much as possible on my shoulder, and just enjoying the little quality time I had before. I mean, everything starts heating up. So I mean, I'm just enjoying what I can out of this whole process and out of everything that's going on.
Gotcha. And so, with that being said, obviously you're probably doing a lot of team interviews through video right now. What's that like? I'm sure it's nothing like what you expected in this pre-draft process. What's different about that? What are the advantages, disadvantages? How's that process going?
I mean, for me, I don't mind it. I mean, it's kind of different. I'm not going to say weird, but it's different having to FaceTime potential coaches or FaceTime like grown men. Because I mean, I'm not used to really FaceTiming older people. But I mean, in terms of the video chat and chopping it up, it's all good. Because I mean, we can still go over what we need to go over. I can still watch the same film that they're watching, and go over plays and just go over everything that we need to. So I mean, we get everything accomplished that we normally would if we had the team visits. It's just not as planned. I mean, yeah.
Now let's get back to let's get to the film here and what you bring to the table. I want to this entire process. Everyone's telling you what you are, what you can do at the next level, what value you bring to the NFL. But I'd love to hear from you what you think separates you from other cornerbacks in this class. What do you bring that's special to the NFL?
I would say what I know I bring. I bring versatility and I bring intelligence. I feel like not even a knock on other corners in the draft, but I just feel like I'm the smartest corner in the draft on the field and off the field. So I mean, just the way I watch film, and as you can see in some of the plays I make, it's about recognizing tendencies and recognizing formations and not just playing off athleticism, but actually knowing what's going on and understanding the game of football. So I mean, and also I don't. I mean, sometimes I see certain articles or certain people say that I can't play certain schemes or coverages, but I mean, if you really turn on the tape, there's not too much that I can't do or that I'm not good at. I mean, I've made plays in zone and I've played great zone coverage. I pressed and I've played great man coverage. So, I mean, it's just about being versatile in every aspect of the corner position.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I read some of those reports that you're not scheme versatile on those things. I just can't believe it because I do think, like you said, so much of your production is based off pattern recognition and off coverage at the line of scrimmage. You do a lot of different things or did a lot of different things at Utah and excelled in multiple roles. Let's get back to that film study. I'd love to hear more about in a given game week how much film you're watching and what exactly you're looking for when you're doing opponent film study before games.
I would say I put in about anywhere. I would say anywhere between 6 and 7 hours total. Between the week, I like to watch about an hour of film every day at nighttime. And then I do that Monday through Friday. And then I like to watch some in the morning as well, just to tune up. So somewhere, in between there about that time. But honestly, it's just for me going, ever since I've been into college and been at Utah, the coaches taught us how to watch film the right way and what to look for. So, I mean, for us, we just start off with first and second downs. We like to see what every offense's favorite formation is and every offense's favorite plays or route concepts or anything that they like to do or what they're known for doing. So, I mean, we like to start off with that and get that kind of get that in our head and really familiarize ourselves with what they like to do. And then we go to situational ball, third downs, red zone, 2 minute, and we just really break that down. And we honestly just take their favorite things. We don't really focus on every single play that we may see on film. We just like to take notes and we kind of calculate, okay, well, out of this many plays, 70% of the time they line up in this formation, they ran this play. So, I mean, when it comes to game time and you see this formation, you think, okay, they like to run this concept a lot. So, I mean, it's just about giving yourself a chance to be able to make plays. So, I mean, honestly, it's just about getting certain keys and certain tendencies. Because, I mean, it's not, you don't know the whole offensive playbook, but you can definitely certain things that may be coming in. Offensive coordinators, one thing I've kind of realized through colleges, they don't change too much. They are who they are. So, I mean, they're not going to go from being a spread team to a run-heavy team. No, if they're spread, and they're going to have their favorite concept. They're going to have their matchups that they try to get and certain things like that. So, I mean, it's just about understanding offenses and situational football.
Yeah, how much film does Terrell Burgess watch? That's another cornerback in Utah, or slot cornerback, safety hybrid that stands out for his instincts and what he's able to do on the football field. How much film is he watching, and can you speak to him as a player and a teammate?
Honestly, I couldn't tell you how much film he watches, but I'm not gonna lie to you, he's the smartest dude I've been around.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, it was times where he was too smart. Like he was like when we were going through practice, he'll call out everybody's route. I'm like, Terrell, you can't like you know what you're doing, but you can't like try to tell me routes. Because I mean, like I was saying earlier, certain teams have certain concepts they like to run out of certain formations. So it'll be about 2-3 different options, and he'll call one of them out, and he'll be like, they're gonna run this, and then if they don't run it, it messes everybody up because everybody was listening to what he said. So it's just like sometimes he tries to do too much, and it's like, okay, Terrell, kind of calm down a little bit and just try to give us a brief explanation of what you think they're going to run. But now he's super smart. He watches a ton of film, and he's been in the program for 4 years, and he really bought into his craft, and he really bought into doing his job. So I mean, on film, just playing with him, I mean, he was always somebody who just did his job. He didn't do anything fancy. He wasn't going to ooh you and ah you, but he just did his job day in and day out, and every week he just came to play. So I mean, and he's one of my best friends. So I mean, it's kind of funny talking about him, just knowing who he is and how goofy he is, and he's always laughing and smiling. He's always the loudest in the room, but when it comes down to business, he's also very he's serious, and he knows what he's doing, and he just has fun doing it.
That's great, man. Sounds awesome. Terrell, I can imagine him calling those plays out, knowing what he does on film. Do you watch any film on yourself and do kind of like self-study in that stuff? And do you watch film on NFL guys in the NFL that maybe you like in your game too?
I definitely watch film on myself, more critical than I would say my coaches did, because I feel like I watch film more on what I can improve on from a technical standpoint, or from what I can do to switch it up for upcoming receivers. Because I mean, if you give somebody like offensive, that they do the same play and they do the same thing every time, it's going to be easy to pick up on. So for me, I like to switch up my techniques in all aspects, really, whether I line up closer in my press bail and cover 3, if I line up further, if I act like I'm pressing and I disguise certain coverages. It's just all about giving different looks, but still running the same cover. So I just always try to be critical of myself and make sure I'm not giving anything away, really, in terms of what I'm doing. If I'm man, I'm just trying to give different looks in everything that I do. So, I mean, I definitely watch film on myself, but I don't watch too much film during the season, I don't watch too much film on corners. That's more of my off-season thing that I like to do. Just kind of watch different guys and watch how they play. And really, it's kind of funny because to watch like certain guys in the NFL, you just see more so how consistent the better and the great ones are in the game. And I feel like that's what separates them from the average to the not so good corners, and kind of the difference in college too. I feel like you see them playing consistently with this technique, or they consistently do certain things. So I feel like that's the difference, not just being great on one or a few plays, but being great through a whole game, through a whole season, and just playing at a high level consistently. That's what I like to take from it, and how they like to run their coverages and play their techniques.
Oh, I want to finish this one. On Twitter, I compared you to Marcus Peters in a lot of ways. I think you're very similar athletically from a size and athleticism standpoint, and I think you win with instincts, and Marcus Peters does that better than anybody in the NFL, in my opinion. But I can't comp you to Marcus Peters if you're not a dog, okay? Because Marcus Peters comps don't come lightly. You need to be able to talk trash.
Right.
You need to be able to step up in that regard. I need to know, what's your opinion on talking trash, playing the mental game?
For me, it's easier for me to talk trash to like better competition.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, in that aspect, it just keeps the game fun, and it keeps you tuned into it. Cause I mean, if you just kind of quiet, just not really talking, I feel like it's easier to get caught not on your game. So I mean, just for me, when I'm going against good competition, I'm going against somebody I need to be on my P's and Q's with. I like to try to talk. I mean, I don't necessarily need to talk to him, but I'll talk to myself out loud, or I'll just talk out loud just to keep myself in it and keep myself hyped in that game and in that moment. So, I mean, in terms of talking trash, I mean, it's fun, especially when receivers like to talk back and they think they are open or something like that, or just always saying little stuff. Receivers always complaining and making excuses for times they don't catch the ball, or they get happy when they do catch a ball or something. So, I mean, it's just fun to just go at it and have that aspect of the game into it as well, not just always, oh, well, he didn't catch it, so that's it, but also letting them know what's going on in the game and how it's going to go.
Great stuff, Jaylon. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast, and I wish you the best of luck moving forward.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Have a good one.
You too. Joining the 2-for-1 Drafts podcast with Ashtyn Davis and Mike Renner, this is Ashtyn Davis, Cal safety, one of the top deep safeties in this class. It's great to have you on. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So right now, obviously, with this COVID-19 pandemic going on, I'm sure your world is a lot different than probably you expected. You probably expected to be traveling to teams, meeting with teams, but you're doing a lot of video conferencing. How has that been for you?
It's been good. It's been, it's a bit of a curveball, but it is what it is. And big picture is there's a lot of people that are worse off and affected more seriously than I am. So I'm just kind of looking at the bigger picture and doing what I can to show teams that I know what I'm talking about and that I'm prepared to play ball at the next level. Nice, man. And how's your family doing? I hope everything's okay. Yeah, doing well. I'm trying to keep them in mind and stay down here, actually. I live on the same property as my grandparents, so, in the off chance that I do have something, I don't want to bring that back home. Mm-hmm. So I'm down here in SoCal training and waiting for the draft to happen. I'll probably go back up there for a couple of days for the draft. But other than that, yeah, I'm just kind of awaiting that whole process to kind of finish up. Yeah. We were talking a little bit before he jumped on and talking about, this opportunity to talk with teams through video conferencing maybe put you at a disadvantage because football so well. You said it's one of your strengths, football IQ, but now other players that maybe don't have that strength got cheat sheets on their computer and those things. Talk to me more about that. Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like I'm always very prepared. I took the interview process very seriously since I wasn't able to participate physically at the combine and didn't have a pro day. So I thought that, the best way for me to sell myself was in the classroom essentially or during my interviews. And so I took those very seriously. And like you said, I believe that football IQ is one of my strengths. And I have no problem drawing up plays, schemes, even ones that I haven't ran, just concepts in general are, a strength of mine. And so, yeah, I don't know if people are having cheat sheets up while they do it, but it's certainly something that's possible. And, but like I said, it is what it is. There's people that are worse off than me and just trying to, keep that in mind. Gotcha. Well, no cheat sheets needed for this one, man. I'll tell you that. Another thing I want to talk about too is, with the injuries you've kind of been battling this offseason, you didn't have an opportunity to participate at the Senior Bowl, and you also didn't have an opportunity to work out at the Combine. What are you doing to get some athletic testing out to these teams? Yeah, so I think here in the next couple of weeks, we're going to do our own little pro day, just show teams that I am healthy and I can move around. Probably just the 40 and some position work. But yeah, I feel really good. I've been, still doing my PT, which isn't really PT at this point. It's mostly a lot of stretching and just touch up stuff. Yeah. But yeah, it's we're hoping to do like our own little version of a pro day. If we can find a field, that's the goal. Send out some position work, send out some of that 40 stuff that everybody likes to see, and then see what teams are talking about after that. Yeah, teams are going to want to see that. You got a really rich track background. I'm sure you don't even have to train the start as much as other players do because you do have, that background. And I know they want, they expect good times. And I think it's something that would elevate your stock with just how fast you are in those things. But do you got any goals in mind for the 40-yard dash? Trying to be the fastest safety in this class? Talk to me. I'm always trying to be the best at a lot of stuff, but it's hard when you have, the hand versus laser time debate and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But I just want to, my main goal is just to show teams that I'm healthy and that I'm still fast. Because I know that I'm fast, and I have that track background to kind of prove it. Mm-hmm. And I don't want there to be any question marks. So I'm doing the 40 regardless. Mm-hmm. If I can find a field, of course. Yeah. And so, yeah, I just want to kind of check all those boxes and make sure, everyone's as confident as I am that I'm going to be successful at the next level.
Yeah, for listeners that don't know, Ashtyn, you sent like an email or something to the athletic director at Cal to get like a walk-on opportunity at Cal because you had a rich track background but no scholarship offers for football. But then you go into football and you obviously light it up, improving every year in PFF grade, kind of elevating yourself to one of the better safety prospects in this class. But I was talking to some guys at Senior Bowl. You read some evaluations from around the league, talent evaluators. They question your toughness because you don't play a ton of football. But like I always find myself questioning that because it doesn't show up on film. I mean, there's a handful of clips where you're blowing up run defense and people say you can't play in the box and those things. What's your opinion when people say that, or if you hear people questioning your toughness? What's your opinion of that? What do you say to that?
Watch the tape. A lot of people, there's guys. I've had guys come up to me and say the same things you're saying that haven't even watched my tape yet. They just make assumptions based on my track background, which track was always kind of a stepping stone for football. I actually played football first. So
wide receiver in high school, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, I played receiver, running back, just whatever I could do to help us win. I think we had something like 17 kids on my
my God,
my junior year. So yeah, it was a rough one for a couple years there, but yeah, I don't know. I just cut the tape on. I played through. I mean, my left adductor injury. I played with that all year.
Mm-hmm.
I played with a torn labrum before. Like I don't know. People don't understand the commitment I have and the toughness I'd say that I have. So
yeah, and I think that's what's important about it too, is that you put on the tape, you don't see those things, but if you make assumptions based on your background, I think it's an easy take to fall into, and I think it's unfortunate that some are falling into that take. I want to bring up more specifically your game. Played a ton of deep safety at Cal. I want to hear from your opinion. I think this entire process, it's other people telling you what you're good at. I want to hear what you're good at and what makes a good deep safety in college football and in the NFL, because I think it's a lot of things, obviously athleticism and certain skill sets, but technique. But I think football IQ also very important. Talk to me about what you think makes you one of the better safety prospects in this class and what makes a better safety in the NFL.
Absolutely. So I think someone that's going to have success as a deep middle safety or a deep defender in general is got to have instincts. He's got to have IQ. He's got to have ball skills. He's got to have everything. But people got to have an understanding of the defense and scheme. And there are no cheat sheets when you get out there on the field. You know what I mean? And you got to understand scheme. You got to understand pre-snap disguises and things like that you can kind of mess with the quarterback. Essentially not send him a text message before the ball is thrown on where the rotation is.
Yeah.
And if you have a guy that's only capable of playing in the deep defense, a lot of the times your hand is shown, and they know where you're rotating. If you don't play in the box and you're shown in the box, they know, come on, this guy's probably going to bail out and play a half or play a third or something like that. So I want to be a guy at the next level that's going to be versatile and be able to play at all levels, in the box, at the line, and deep as well. So I think that's important. I think you got to have all the things that I mentioned, and I think that I've checked all those boxes. Yeah.
I think disguising coverage is very important. We talked a little bit before jumping on here, looked over some of your better plays from this past season. And I think the first thing that stands out when you walk through them is, hey, this is what I'm in, but I'm not trying to show your hand. And I think that's an underrated quality at the safety position, because if you show your hand early, it limits you from making those big plays. Now, before we let you go here, I got to bring up a specific play. We walked through it before we jumped on the podcast here, but there's a play against Oregon where Justin Herbert kind of scrambles to the left, and while he's running along the sideline, not out of bounds yet, you go make a strip, try to make a play to win that football game. It gets flagged, 15-yard penalty, home quarterback, home stadium. What's your opinion of that play? And I've heard you sent a picture of Justin Herbert's way to kind of throw some things at him as well.
Absolutely. So Justin's down here training with us. In that particular drive, I think they were up 7, and it was the fourth quarter with a few minutes left, and all I saw was the football was in his near hand, and I was trying to get it out so that our offense had a chance to go down and score and tie the ball game up. And like you said, it was kind of unfortunate set of circumstances. I don't know. I think I would do it again in the off chance I got that ball out and gave us a chance to win, because that's just the type of competitor I am. If he was already out of bounds or if it was a malicious hit, then absolutely not, wouldn't do it again. But I think if you go back and you watch the tape and look at that photo I shared, I think that you could tell what my intent was, just to get that ball out and give our offense a chance to go down and score again.
You guys are good friends now, though, obviously training together down there. But also, how often were you sending him that photo? You say every week, every day?
I was sending him like twice a week, something like that. Just pretty much anytime I got bored, I would send Justin a photo. And but good dude. Definitely was a good sport about it. And yeah.
That's great, man. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast, and I wish you the best of luck moving forward. Cut the tape on. This guy's tough. This guy's one of the better deep safeties in this class. Thanks again, Ashtyn.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. All right, man. Well, I appreciate it. That's all recorded. Should go up soon. Best of luck moving forward, man. I hope you stay healthy, keep the family healthy, and I'm looking forward to that pro day stuff. If you do take video of that, send it my way if you don't send it out yourself.
Yeah, of course.
All right.
And thank you for the hat. Appreciate
Dude,
it.
of course, man. We got hats coming out our ass, all right? If you ever need another one, let me know.
Yeah, of course.
See you, buddy.
Have a good one. Thanks for having me.
What I found most impressive from both interviews, but with Ashtyn and Jaylon, is that they're both just super smart players, guys that really, really do dive into the tape, really do value route anticipation, play recognition, and those things. Before I did those interviews, I walked through some of their best plays with them, Mike, and I walked through. We did screen share through Skype and these things, and hearing them, what they're looking at pre-snap, what they're looking at, 2 seconds into the play, and these things are just fantastic. There's a near interception on Jaylon Johnson's tape where he jumps in front of an out route, and I assume he jumps right as the receiver's breaking and has a really good break on the football. But he said, I wasn't looking at the receiver. I was looking at the quarterback rolling out. And just like what these players are looking at and what their reads are and stuff is just awesome. And I really found it interesting that both of those players are very smart players, very instinctive players at their positions respectively.
You cake your pants for guys who tape study. Like if I broke down a play for you, like I was Jaylon Johnson, you'd put me in the third round. You'd be like, this guy, you just got the moxie. I don't care if he's a slow, unathletic 30-year-old white guy, not 30 yet, but almost 30-year-old white guy, third round grade. He just knows. So
I agree. There's cake currently in the pants. My take is when the tape is good, the production is good, and then you hear how they're getting there, and it's something that I think will translate the next level. That's something that's sustainable in the NFL. It's not athleticism. It's not like I just beat the guy in front of me, blah, blah, blah. That I feel really confident about translating in the NFL. Guys that know the process, are ready to treat the NFL like a business, like a job. I really do think have more longevity and a better opportunity of succeeding in the NFL when they do have the necessary requirements in athleticism, the production's there, the tape's there as well.
It's like I think it's like more the passion aspect of
true.
You don't do that unless you care. Mm-hmm. You're not in the it's going above and beyond. That is what it takes, because you're not done to no one comes in. So few guys come in the NFL ready and are going to be dominant from day one. And those guys, I see it more as a very attractive cherry on top of the prospect.
You say a bad prospect guy that doesn't have great athleticism, the tape isn't great, but he studies all night long on tape. He's just grinding it all night. It's like, okay, that's a cherry on top of what's already not something that's great. I don't really like the tape you put out. You're not studying enough or whatever it may be. But when you do have that backing,
cherry on top of fruitcake.
Exactly. No one likes that. No one likes that. But again, Jaylon and Ashtyn were both fantastic on the mic, and I really appreciate them coming on the podcast.
Clarify, I did not mean fruitcake. I meant actual fruitcake. Okay.
Continue. I think let's move forward to Top Shelf or Well segment here on the 2-4 Drafts podcast, where we look at one position and look at guys that are projected to go in the top 30, top 40 picks and compare them to day 2, day 3 prospects. Who would you rather have, considering the pick value and those things? I'll kick it off here. Kenneth Murray in round 1, let's say back end of round 1 in the picks 30 to 40 range, or Jordan Brooks, the Texas Tech off-ball linebacker, maybe late day 2, early day 3.
Whose name we still don't know how to spell. In Chad Ryder's latest mock draft, it was with an A.
Really?
It's with a Y on Texas Tech's website. But they're similar players is why. So these guys have a very similar skill set in that they are just at their best, athletic going forward. They in a straight line, screens, swings, wide runs, between the tackles runs, no problem with these guys. Now, moving laterally, maybe turning their hips and running, their feel for zone coverage, much bigger question marks. They need a role that's going to fit their strength. So Kenneth Murray, we'll assume he's going to be drafted around 20 to 30 range in this draft is what I'll say. Jordan Brooks, I think, is second half of the second round to middle of the third round is his range. I'll go Jordan Brooks here. I think that, one, I don't think they're super different as prospects. I think Kenneth Murray, obviously, probably a little more athletic, but Brooks, I think, is probably a little better in run defense at the moment, which, yes, it's not the biggest needle mover, but it still does have some value. So I'm going to go with Brooks. If I'm saying back of the second versus back of the first, give me the guy in the back of the second. Text Jordan Brooks.
I am with you because I can't get on board with taking Kenneth Murray at the back end of the first, while factoring in positional value and the player and skill set he brings to the table. I mean, you say it best. When you look at his tape, he's great flying to the football, looking forward and reacting to things in front of him. But I mean, if you have to ask him to turn around and do different things in zone coverage, it's a little bit of a chore for him. I think instincts need to get better, play recognition, anticipation, those things we talked about with Jaylon Johnson, Ashtyn Davis, those things probably need to get better for Kenneth Murray. Yeah. And when you're looking at the linebacker position, there's not a ton of scenarios where I feel really, really confident about taking one early versus one late, because I do think, again, you look back at the positional value, the concept of positional value and how much these guys are getting paid. Like, the linebacker position is not high up there. For that reason, getting athletic linebackers on day 2 and day 3, or guys that can really fill the role you want on day 2, day 3, I think you're usually going to opt in that direction.
Yeah. And we've seen this kind of play out again and again, and about linebacker value, and not a lot of the ones that you do draft in the first round, it's not as safe. Like, people think of it as kind of a safe position to draft. We've seen kind of in recent years, it's not necessarily the safest position in round one.
Yep. All right. Moving to the next linebacker here. It's Patrick Queen of LSU. Probably, again, at back end of the first round, like Kenneth Murray, in the same Kenneth Murray range, maybe earlier, against Akeem Davis-Gaither, the App State off-ball linebacker who played a lot of edge, kind of a weird hybrid role at App State. Super athletic dude. I think he's 220 pounds, a lighter frame, but brings a ton of athleticism and raw measurements, good measurements from him, Akeem Davis-Gaither. Where are you going here with Akeem being like a day 2 type and Patrick Queen back end of round 1?
All right, so I'll say, picks 15 to 25 is where I'll say probably Patrick Queen's range is right now. And then I'll say probably middle third is Akeem Davis-Gaither's. In those ranges, I think I'll still go Patrick Queen here. I think I'll go early. I just got done saying that not a lot of first rounders hit. It's just, I keep coming around on Queen. And yes, there's some bad in terms of what he does in coverage at times. Like, he's not perfect in coverage by any means. He's not an absolute, in terms of his feel for zone coverage, still not like elite by any means, and the way his read and reactability, not quite there yet. But he only had like 9 games as a starter. Like, he was not a full-time starter. The guy has barely played football, is not even 21 years old. Like, those instincts do take time to develop. That quickness takes time to develop, and he really has all the explosiveness, the smoothness in his hips to get the job done. So I'm going to go Patrick Queen here, even though I love Akeem Davis-Gaither. I think he's a weapon in and of himself. But to me, Akeem Davis-Gaither is even more raw than Patrick Queen as a senior coming out, as an older prospect. So give me the guy who's younger, and even though I'll pay the premium for it.
I think I'm leaning Patrick Queen as well, but it depends what you're looking for at off-ball linebacker. If you need or really want an off-ball linebacker in this draft to start for you next year, or even over the next 2 years, Patrick Queen has to be your guy. And I think he can be that guy. I think he's better than Kenneth Murray, not significantly, but by definitely a degree, because the instincts are there with Patrick Queen. I think he processes a lot better than Kenneth Murray. I don't think he's going to be completely lost when you ask him to turn around and off coverage. He's not perfect, but I don't think he's going to be completely lost. And with Akeem Davis-Gaither, there's a lot of learning that's going to have to happen at the next level. If you want to make your linebacking core more athletic, add depth, Akeem Davis-Gaither. But if you're like, hey, we need a linebacker in this class, we want to start him in 2020 and 2021, I mean, you have to go Patrick Queen, even though maybe I would never want to put myself in this situation where I need to force a position in the first round.
That's fair. And again, I'm not sure I really would love to draft Patrick Queen there, considering what will be on the board. But I think you'll be getting a good player at 15 to 25, like if you do draft him. So I'm not going to hate on it too much.
All right, last one, and this one's a bit hot. Isaiah Simmons, the Clemson off-ball linebacker who should go in the top 5, top 10 picks, or Willie Gay Jr., the Mississippi State off-ball linebacker who tested in some ways better than Isaiah Simmons from an athleticism standpoint, who probably goes day 3. I mean, the off-field concerns are somewhat significant, but he did blow Daniel Jeremiah and his sources away in the interview process. We'll see if he sneaks into day 2, but probably late day 2, early day 3 for Willie Gay Jr.
I'm going to go I'm going to go Willie Gay Jr. here. And I know it sounds crazy, and I feel a little crazy for saying it. But like, if he actually saw the field and this guy was actually had none of the off-field red flags, we would be talking about a first rounder. I'm just saying the value of getting him in the late third is so much more than what Isaiah Simmons is obviously the better player. But there's value of getting him in the late third is just so much more, can be so much more than getting Isaiah Simmons in the top 10. It just, like, Isaiah Simmons will be very good in the NFL. I don't have too many doubts about that. But Willie Gay Jr., I think, will also be very good in the NFL if he just gets an opportunity to play. Like, he's never played bad football in coverage at Mississippi State. He's always been very, very good. Now, his reads, his run defense, very big question marks. And his off-field, a massive question mark. But the dude is a freak of nature and is very talented and has played good football. I'm going to go Willie Gay Jr. here.
My take is this is a classic, like, bird in the hand versus two birds in the bush situation, because I think Isaiah Simmons is going to be very, very good in the NFL. And I feel very comfortable even considering position value because this guy can play so many different things. Like, this is not a Patrick Queen versus Willie Gay conversation. This is a guy that can play deep safety, slot corner. This guy can do so many things for you in terms of Isaiah Simmons from Clemson, to where, like, I'm leaning more Isaiah Simmons because, one, you're banking on, if you do go the Willie Gay option, that you get him in a value you feel good about, back end of round 2, top of, or back end of round 3, maybe top of round 4. And also that none of these red flags, off-field concerns show up. I mean, there's so much more to the conversation with Willie Gay Jr. to where I feel like there might be 3 birds in that bush, but there's some thorns in there too. I don't know if I'm diving in when I know Isaiah Simmons, if he falls to, like, say, the Carolina Panthers at 7, I feel really, really good about Isaiah Simmons because he's going to get more value than the average off-ball linebacker in the NFL.
Yeah, this isn't really top shelf or well. This is like Don Julio 1942 versus like Casamigos still. But that Casamigos could be expired. Like, it could be really old, and you could spit it out immediately once you.
You know what this is? This is the Don Julio, whatever. I don't drink tequila, whatever. The top shelf tequila versus the tequila you got offered in Mobile for free at the back end.
No,
like, that's what it is, because it could be fantastic. Tequila? It could make you. It could make you drunk in 5 minutes, but it also could be making you throw up as well. So it's an interesting stuff. All right, that's usually how it works. That was a fun segment, definitely interesting. There, I think to finish that one, I'm going Isaiah Simmons, Patrick Queen, and Jordan Brooks. And then I think you were kind of in a similar boat, but you had Willie Gay.
Jordan Brooks, Patrick Queen, Willie Gay.
Gotcha.
Give it to me.
Let's finish here. Perfect pairings. I'm sticking with the off-ball linebacker, and I really do love this comp based on, like, the type of athlete he is, but also, like, usage. Like, if you want to use him to the best of his ability in the NFL, this is how you got to do it. It's Kenneth Murray to Rashaan Evans. They blitz him a ton. They keep him near the line of scrimmage. He's a shark in the water against the run. In coverage, maybe you have some concerns when he's asked to do things behind him, but attacking in a man coverage against running backs and tight ends, I think he can hold his own because he's athletic. I think this comp, from a usage standpoint, athleticism standpoint, this is what you're getting in Kenneth Murray. And for that reason, I don't know if I'm drafting Rashaan Evans in round 1. Like, I wouldn't. Like, yes, he's really good at what he does, but how much value does that bring to the table? He's very limited in that regard.
I like this comp in terms of how stylistically they play. And, like, thinking back to it, like, I think Murray's a better prospect than Evans is. Evans obviously won the first round. I think we had, like, a second on Evans coming out. But, yeah, I mean, like, stylistically, I like it. I think with Murray, and that's what I'm saying, I think Murray's a little better in terms of, like, a little more explosive. Like, he's going to blow up backs a little bit more, gets there a little bit quicker than Evans. But Evans has worked out well in the NFL, like, better than I even thought he might. So,
absolutely,
yeah,
he's worked out well in the role he plays. But I mean,
but
again, I mean, I don't know how much value you're bringing at that role. I think more value is sought after, and like what Deion Jones can do when he's perfectly healthy, what Bobby Wagner can do, Luke Kuechly, in terms of really affect all 2 phases of the game and on third down and those things, and like stick in zone coverage, smart, instinctual player, that kind of stuff. So, go ahead, perfect pairing.
All right, mine. And trust me, I've definitely said this before, and I know, like, I repeat stuff a bunch, and trust me, I feel like a fraud every time I repeat a take that I've had before.
Glad you're finally
like,
admitting this.
Don't be like, oh my God, you say the same thing. Like, I know, I feel like a fraud, but it's something like you have to do. You can't change your takes on guys. Like, they're your takes on guys. So Tyler Johnson, Minnesota wide receiver, perfect pairing for him to me is Devontae Adams, the Green Bay Packers wide receiver. Devontae wasn't a freak athletically. I mean, he had like a 39-inch vertical, I want to say, coming out, but ran the 4.5s, not super fast, had drop issues early on in his career. But there's just something to the way they move and that shake off the line of scrimmage and at the top of their routes to where they can set up defensive backs and get out of their breaks in a hurry, despite not being maybe necessarily the fastest guys or having the best agility drills, that sort of thing. There's something there that I think translates well. And I want on my football team at the next level. Tyler Johnson, I don't think is limited to the slot, even though he played a lot of slot at Minnesota. But I think that comp, just the way they move is so similar. And I think Tyler Johnson's good, man. Like I don't know where the hell he's going to go in this draft, but I think I would be willing to take him like early, mid day 2. I think he's that good. What's interesting is like I like the Devontae Adams comp, but without like this weird hate. Like imagine Devontae. It's like Devontae Adams, but like no one hates him yet. Like for whatever, because like Tyler Johnson has like legit like people don't like this guy. Like I've heard that the Minnesota coaches didn't like him. I've heard some crazy stuff from people around the league and scouts and evaluators and things like that. And the guy, bowed out of the East West Shrine game. We talked to him. I talked to him and I brought up like, hey, he said, yeah, I don't pay attention to that stuff, but I kind of pressed a little bit and I said, okay, but you do know that people are saying this stuff about your character. You do know that people are saying things about you or whatever. And he's like, dude, I don't get it. They don't know me, like blah, 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 blah. But like, I don't know. Like Tyler Johnson is such an interesting evaluation because you have people that like legit hate this dude. But then there's also like, weird. When you look at his production, even from like, if you went the fantasy angle, like dominator rating, market share, all this stuff, like this guy was very productive. And if his coaches didn't like him, why'd they always throw him the football? Like, I don't get it. It's someone I want to talk to, and maybe I'll try and work on this. But like the quarterback, Tanner Morgan, like he was in the PFF offices, but I missed him that day. But like, what was his opinion of Tyler Johnson? Like, because he threw him the football a ton. Was that schemed? Was that like, no, this guy's just always open? I don't know. I just think there's more to Tyler Johnson than like the blanketed take that he's not good, day 3 player with character concerns. I'm just not there with him. I agree. It's all kind of out of left field for me. I just don't get it. Like you don't be that productive in an offense that a Minnesota offense doesn't produce a lot of top end wide receivers, even though they're going to produce another one next year somehow. But it's weird for sure.
Interesting stuff. Well, that's going to do it for the Friday edition of the 2-for-1 Drafts podcast. We appreciate you guys listening. Remember, go and review the podcast. Leave a review with your email spaces between the @ symbol, and we'll make sure to send you a copy of the 2020 NFL Draft Guide. That is now.
I have to do a space between the .com too. I'm not sure.
Oh, really?
Put as many spaces in as you can between those things. Just
put your damn mailing address at this point. We'll figure it out. We'll find a way to get you the draft guide. But that's going to do it. Thanks again, guys. This is Austin Gayle, Mike Renner, 2-for-1 Drafts.